Bob here, Chopper Bob Customs. Welcome back to the channel. Hey, thanks for subscribing. If you haven't subscribed, please consider doing so now. I'd also appreciate it if you like the videos. Leave a comment. Let me know what you're thinking. If you got any questions, I try and get back to folks as quick as I can. And hit that notification bell. An update, I'm out of my brace, not wearing the big glove anymore, in physical therapy right now. It's coming along slow. It's not quite there, and they say it probably won't get quite there, but at any rate, making progress. So at any rate, back to work on the 57. I haven't been shooting a lot of video because of the thumb, and I'm so far behind. But I thought today I would videotape doing the modifications to the fuel tank. If I had my choice, I would put in a tank that was fuel injection ready. That would be my first choice. My second choice would be to do a fuel injection pump in the tank with the kit that allows you to install it in an existing tank or a non-fuel injection tank. Martin on his 57 has decided that he wants to go with the inline fuel pump. He already had the fuel tank, and he already had the Sniper assembly, and he's not 100% certain that he's wanting to keep the Sniper on the car. So at any rate, so what I found out was on people that were complaining about the Sniper, particularly the inline fuel pump, I was originally planning on doing the siphon, where you have the pickup at the bottom of the tank, but it comes up to the top of the tank and then comes out and comes back down so that it's at the same level and you're actually siphoning gas out of the fuel tank to the fuel pump. But a lot of guys said that they had problems with the pumps going bad even when they were doing that. And really the only way to do it correctly is to draw off the bottom of the tank. And in order to do that, we've gone ahead and gotten a sump to put at the back of the tank at the bottom so that it will have a good flow of gas to the pump. Should be in good shape there. There are some things that have to be done. The first thing is I've laid out, I'm not sure whether you can see this or not. Let me lift the tank up here a little bit. Get some of this stuff out of the way. Set this aside for now. But I have laid out where the cuts are going to be. One of the things you probably notice right off is that I've got these two indentions here that I'm going to have to bring this up level so that I can get a good seal weld around the sump, which is going to go right there like that. I'm also probably going to put in a baffle. So with that, the first thing I'm going to do is I've got holes marked out, or locations for holes, so that the corners will have a nice radius, not provide a place to crack. Because we definitely do not want a crack to start forming and run across the weld and cause a leak. Well, there's no turning back now. Okay, so what I'm going to have to do in these areas here is shrink it, and what I plan on trying is a tuck shrinking. But the first thing I need to do before I do that work is I need to drill the hole for the return. And I basically have chosen a spot right here, and on the car I had to come in and basically put on the bottom, I guess it's a dimple in the trunk, it's a bump to provide clearance for the return assembly. Okay, so I'm not going to put that in right now. The thing is, you got to remember to put it in before you weld the sump on, because there's going to be no way to tighten the nut up once you get the sump put in here. So with that, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to try to do something with the tuck shrinking. Okay, I don't have a tucking fork, but what I do have that I think will work for tucking it is a pair of needle nose vice grips, because I basically want to come in here about 1 inch to do the tuck, and I believe that I can do that like this. I think I'm going to try something different. Okay, so I've got it's still just a little bit, but I'm probably going to pull it into place when I weld it. I ended up using, I took my stretcher off of my shrinker stretcher combo so I could get in here with my stretcher my shrinker and get this shrunk. Got this one pulled up. It's got a pretty good fit. And then I went ahead and I made a baffle. Of course, the sump at the rear on acceleration it will, the fuel will go into the sump, but I wanted to put something in here for braking to try and keep the pickup from being uncovered under braking. So basically I've got a 4-inch tall that tapers to about 1.5 inches, about halfway back. So that should hold the fuel in there, and then I've got 5 holes in the front of it to make sure that the fuel can get in through the front if the tank's a little bit low. It doesn't rely on getting in the back. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to take phosphoric acid and give this a wipe down to get a phosphor coating on it. There's nothing really I can put on it in the tank. I guess I could epoxy it, but I really just don't want stuff flaking off and getting into the filter and clogging it up. So, and I think if he keeps gasoline in it and I have a phosphoric wash on it, I think it'll be probably as rust proof as the rest of the tank. Anyway, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to call it a day. When I get back out here tomorrow and start the video up, I'll be welding this in and then putting the return in. Of course, I got to vacuum out and probably run a magnet through the inside of the tank to get all the filings out of it, and then start welding the sump on. So the several hours for me, just a couple seconds for you. Okay, so let's talk about what I've done off camera. Like I said when I was finishing up yesterday, I did wipe down the baffle with phosphoric acid. The principle, that's like a pickling to help prevent rust on it. Today, with it all dry, I went ahead with a clean shop towel and rubbed it down real good so that there's no loose particles on it. I've gone ahead and the bottom half of the tank with a DA or with a red Scotch pad, I've knocked the sheen off of it, got it ready to put some paint on it. At the end of the day, obviously there's going to be a lot of bare metal where I ground away for welding, and also the bare metal on the sump. And so what I decided to do is basically paint the bottom half of the tank. The top half of the tank really hasn't had any real damage to it, and you can't see it. So I decided to just paint the bottom half of the tank. And then I did vacuum it out once. I'll probably vacuum it out several times between now and then. Yeah, so now what I'm doing is at some point I have to install this, and this is the return fitting for the return line from the fuel injection unit back to the tank. And now let's talk about what Holley does right and what Holley does wrong. And I don't know how old this is. I know Martin had it for quite some time, so hopefully they have fixed the issue with it. One of the first things they say, slip the fuel cuff. Now this, if you look at the parts diagram, the number parts diagram, this is the fuel cuff right here, and this is to take the fuel to the bottom of the tank on the return, so that it's not aerating the fuel. You don't want to just dump it in the top of the tank and have it splashing and causing a lot of aeration in the fuel. So this takes it down into the bottom of the tank, into submerged in fuel. And the one thing that they do say is to use the clamps that come with the kit. Well, according to the parts call out, these are supposed to be number 8s, and these are all number 16s, and I'm not sure how they're going to do on the heavy fuel injection rubber line that goes between the fittings and the first filter, the filter and the pump and the filter, and then the filter and the rest of the fuel line fittings. But on this thin cuff, it would not pull down tight enough. Now here's the thing, there shouldn't be any real pressure in here. At any point in the return line, Holley doesn't want more than 3 psi. So this really isn't to hold pressure. It's primarily just to make sure that the hose is clamped above the barb on the fitting so that it cannot slide past that barb. And so I just gone ahead and got a regular old screw clamp and put it on there, trimmed it up so that it looks nice. Then the next thing I've got to do is I've got to make sure that it is submerged, but it is too long. And so I'm going to have to cut some of it off. So what I've done is I've kind of put it together. It's just finger tight, but that's going to be close enough because it just has to be submerged in the fuel at the bottom of the tank. But it has to be up high enough that the fuel can get out of that line into the tank. Otherwise, it would be a restriction that would cause pressure to build up. So basically, this needs to be cut off about 3 1/8 inches. So given the gasket thickness, if I go 3 1/8, that should be enough to cut off. And I'm going to double check this in a different way. Measure twice, cut once. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up one rung and cut this off. Okay. So these are called Doughty seals. Get some wrenches and I'll be right back. Okay, so number 4 will hold the fitting, and I'm getting it lined up with where I'm fairly certain the dent is in the floor of the trunk. And this is a 7/8 socket, so we'll see if I can't snug this up. Okay, so that is installed, and feeling around in there, I know that it is actually coming down into the corresponding channel on the bottom of the tank. Let me flip this over. Now all I have to do is be careful that I don't bump it too severely while I'm working on it. Okay, now I've elected to do this with the MIG, primarily because it's going to be a lot easier to tack, at least for me anyway. A note of caution, if you're doing this on an old tank, you want to be sure to take the tank to a radiator shop and have it thoroughly cleaned so there are no residual hydrocarbons in it. Yeah, I can't state this enough. If you don't know what you're doing, don't do it. Okay, I think I'm going to take a break here. I'll be right back. Okay, so I've gone ahead and vacuumed out the tank one last time, and I've got the sump cleaned up. I still need to scuff it up, but I'm going to wait until I get all the work done on it here. What I've decided to do is I've decided to go ahead and put rosettes in for the strength to hold it to the bottom of the tank, and then I'll come back in and seal weld it along the edge. I've been debating what to do there. If I'm doing TIG, if I'm on while I'm doing the TIG, it'll look great. When I do TIG and I'm not on, it'll look horrible. But I think probably what I'm going to do, I'm going to take my wife's advice and do that in the morning while I'm fresh. But for right now, I'm going to go ahead and see if I can't get these rosettes put in and get it fitting a little bit closer to the tank.
Okay, so I'll get these cleaned up a bit and get the welder set up for tomorrow. It'll be a couple hours for me. It'll be just a few seconds for you, and I'll come back and if I'm on the TIG, you'll get to see me TIG weld it, and if I'm not on the TIG, you'll know that I made an attempt and I decided to MIG it on. So we'll see what tomorrow brings, but I think I need to do it while I'm fresh. And so, be right back. Okay, so all right, I've got the TIG set up, and I'm gonna give it a try. See if I'm on my game with TIG today. If not, you'll never see this video. So I've got it wire brushed, got it wiped down with acetone. Got everything set up. We're going to see how it goes. Okay, well, I started off pretty solid, but as the morning wore on, I got progressively worse. And well, if it doesn't leak, grinder and paint make me the welder I ain't. We'll see how this cleans up, and gonna pressure check it. Probably this afternoon. I don't know. Let it cool down a little bit and I'll clean it up and we'll see what I got. Okay, so the welds. It started out a little bit slow. I had a few problems right at the very beginning, but then basically put in I think a very nice looking bead on this side, went to the other side, basically did the same thing. Came down here, started having problems. Don't know whether the problems were there or whether I created got too overconfident and created the problems, but whatever happened down here kind of got to my confidence level, and I didn't feel too good about myself. And what I probably should have done was, when I started running into problems, just stop and let it sit for a while and come back, but I didn't do that. I kept working on it, got it done, and now I'm testing it for leaks. So what I've done here is I've got the plug in the bung that we're not going to be using, and I've got the plug in the drain. I've covered the inlet with a board and a ratchet strap holding it in place. It does leak. I've got the cover on the vent tube, and then over on the other side I've got a -6 to barb fitting with a hose with clamps on it and a bolt in it to block it off. It leaks here particularly, but I think I can get a good check with this, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. As you can see, when I crank this up to 60, this needle moves a little bit. Now here's the thing, gasoline is going to be about 1/3 of a PSI, so basically anything over a PSI and we're in good shape. The other thing is my spray bottle gave up, so I'm having to basically pour and spread it around with my fingers. And here I'm going to show you what a leak looks like. So if I take and I pour this on the seam all around it, and then I smear it around, I find a leak right there. Okay, so I got one that I gotta fix. Let's see if I've got anything else while I still got this wet. That's looking good. See if I can shift this up to get to stay on that surface. It's really leaking right there. You can feel it where the fuel inlet is. Okay, so I'll go ahead and get set up and fix that. Okay, so with the tank up there in place, I'm checking the clearance of the dent that I put in the floor. And I don't know whether you can see that or not, but I've got clearance for the return line. So now that I know that is good, I can go ahead and pull the tank down out of here and get some paint on it. Okay, so fingers crossed, I've got the leak repaired, and got the tank installed in the car, got it painted, and yeah, so I built this support and protector to mount the fuel tank. The four screws right there, what holds the fuel tank in place, and then you can see where the line comes out to go forward to supply the Sniper fuel injection unit. And I still have to put gas in it, but there you can see, I think, let me get around here like that, the return line coming into the tank, and with the dent that I put in the floor to make that happen. I've got the sending unit connected. I've got the plug on the stock fuel outlet so that it's sealed up, but that's I've got the sending unit and the sending unit ground going up to the Dakota. I've got I did switch which line on the sump it was blocked off. I don't know that I can point that out right easily or not. Just because the fuel filter and the pump and the fuel filter take up a lot of real estate. Here's a look at the back of the car. And then Uncle Dirtbag was by, and he pointed out that on his 55 he was having problems with this O-ring leaking on the fuel inlet to the tank. Apparently the engineers in 1954 probably, since this started in 55, didn't understand that the quality of the Chinese O-rings was probably not going to be up to what it was 67 years ago. And hopefully I've got this aligned correctly so it'll leak, but I know Uncle Dirtbag, he takes a lot of care in getting his stuff right too. And he's just hoping that as the gasoline swells the O-ring, that it'll stop leaking there. I guess the alternative is to only fill the tank up halfway, and since they recommend you don't get below a quarter of a tank, you're going to be stopping for gas quite a bit. But I also went ahead and they had like 5/8 heater hose in here for the vent line, and it didn't hold up too well. It was hard as a rock, and it basically just slid right off. I didn't have to loosen the clamps. I did get 1/2 inch fuel line to put the vent tube in there,
The Gates rubber connector was still in pretty good shape, so I went ahead and reused it. Of course, it does have a new O-ring on it where it joins the tank, and I'm just hoping, yeah, it fits snug, so I'm hoping that I'm good there. I'm always learning stuff, and this was the first time I actually done it this way. Like I said in a previous part of this video, I'm learning that if my welds start to go awry, I need to put the torch down and come back the next day and finish up when I'm fresh. I'm not a professional welder. I mean, those guys have to do it 8 hours a day without fail. But with me, I can stop, and I should stop when things aren't going right, because I get frustrated and then things just go completely wrong. So, but got the one hole patched up, checked it again, and I could not find any more bubbles. So, fingers crossed, I've got it good to go. But the things I learned is the sump's a nice idea, but on a stock tank in the stock location, not so much, because it does require that things sit low. And if I had that to do over again, it probably would have been either get the tank that's prepped for an in-tank fuel pump, or if nothing else, get an in-tank fuel pump and prep a stock tank, although I much prefer the one that's prepped for it. And if I'm going to go with a sump on a fuel tank, it needs to be a fuel cell inside the trunk, so the sump is just hanging down below the trunk floor, which would have allowed me to put the fuel pump on this bar right here, and I would not have had to have it down so low and created a need for protection like I've got on here now. But on the whole, I think it's looking pretty good. And with that, I'm going to be moving on to some other things. I haven't been videotaping as much. I obviously didn't videotape the repair. I still am healing. I've got probably 20 to 25% of the movement in my thumb. But it slowed me down, and videotaping and all the editing requires time, and I just need to get this 57 back to the owner. I'm way late on it, and we'll let it go at that. For now, Chopper Bob out.